The hum of the espresso machine usually soothed Eleanor Vance, CEO of the Daily Grind coffee chain. Today, it merely grated on her nerves. For months, glowing reports from the regional manager, Mark, had painted a picture of success for branch number 17 in Maple Creek. Yet the persistent whispers of high staff turnover and a slew of lukewarm customer reviews, hinting at a tense atmosphere, told a different story. Eleanor, disguised in a comfortable cardigan and an old baseball cap, her usually immaculate hair tucked away, pulled her rented minivan into the nearly full parking lot of the Maple Creek location. It was 8 a.m., peak morning rush, the perfect time to observe. Her cover story was simple: Sarah Miller, a retired librarian visiting her niece. The bell above the door chimed as she entered, and the comforting aroma of roasted coffee and freshly baked pastries enveloped her. The cafe was bustling. The floor was clean, but she noted a stack of old newspapers near the condiment station, and the Barista of the Month board still featured April's winner despite it being late October. These were small details, but they spoke volumes about oversight. A young man with a forced smile and a name tag reading Kyle approached. "Just one today, ma'am?" he asked, his uniform slightly askew and missing the standard Daily Grind pin. "Yes, thank you," Eleanor replied, adopting a slightly higher, gentler voice. Kyle gestured vaguely towards a small table near the back, muttering, "Someone will be with you." No warm greeting, no eye contact, strike one. From her vantage point, Eleanor observed the main service area. 3 baristas worked the floor. 2 young women in crisp new aprons seemed to be taking their time, chatting near the pastry display, each handling only a few customers. The 3rd barista, however, was a whirlwind of practiced efficiency. She moved with purpose, making drinks, taking orders, and wiping down counters simultaneously. Her name tag read Lily. Her uniform was clean but noticeably worn, the embroidered logo slightly faded. Unlike the other barista's superficial smiles, Lily's expressions shifted naturally between focused concentration and polite service. After a few minutes, Lily approached Eleanor's table, slightly out of breath but composed. "Good morning, sorry for the wait," she said, her smile genuine but tired, dark circles visible beneath her eyes. "Can I get you started with a coffee?" "Yes, please, a large black," Eleanor replied, maintaining her character. As Lily poured, Eleanor noticed the steadiness of her hands despite the evident exhaustion. "Our special today is the maple pecan latte," Lily recited, "perfect for a chilly morning like this." Eleanor chuckled. "Sounds wonderful, but I'll stick with black. Been on the road long?" Lily's eyes lit up briefly. "Just came from a night shift at my second job," she admitted, a hint of weariness in her voice. "Trying to save up for tuition." Eleanor's instincts, honed over decades in business, bristled with concern. The 2 younger baristas continued their leisurely pace, occasionally glancing at Lily with what seemed like amusement rather than concern. Through the kitchen door, Eleanor glimpsed a man in his 40s with a manager's badge. It was David Stone, the manager, thinner than in his corporate photo, his expressions sharper. He spoke briefly to Kyle, and they shared a laugh, looking in Lily's direction. When Lily returned with Eleanor's coffee, perfectly prepared, Eleanor decided to probe gently. "Busy morning for you," she observed casually. "You're working twice as hard as those others." Lily's smile flickered. "It's just how the shifts are scheduled," she said carefully. "Some sections are busier than others." "Tips must be good at least," Eleanor asked, taking a sip of her coffee. The pause before Lily's answer was brief but telling. "Morning shifts are actually the worst for tips," she finally said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Eleanor before could respond, Lily was called away. Eleanor watched Lily go, her coffee cooling as the CEO inside her began to boil. Something was very wrong at Daily Grind number 17. As the morning crowd thinned, Eleanor caught Lily's eye and raised her empty mug. Lily hurried over. "Can I get you anything else, ma'am?" she asked. "Just a check, when you have a moment," Eleanor replied, then added, "and perhaps a minute of your time if you're not too busy." Weariness flashed across Lily's face. "I can bring your check, but I'm not sure about chatting. We're pretty strict about personal conversations." "I understand," Eleanor interrupted gently. "Just curious about the area. My nephew is thinking of moving here." The lie worked. Lily's shoulders relaxed slightly. "I'll be right back with your check." When she returned, Eleanor noticed she tucked a fresh order pad into her apron, her way of justifying lingering if questioned. "So your nephew's moving to the area?" she asked, setting down the check. Eleanor nodded, taking her time with her wallet. "He's considering it. I'm scoping it out, seeing if it's the kind of place where he'd be treated right." She met Lily's eyes meaningfully. "I notice things, like how hard you work compared to some others here." Lily's practiced smile faltered. She glanced over her shoulder, then leaned closer. "It's not supposed to be like this," she said softly. "This branch used to be different before David took over." "How long have you worked here?" Eleanor asked, keeping her tone casual while sliding a $20 bill onto the check. 2 years. Started right out of high school and kept going." Pride flickered across her tired features. "Just trying to finish my nursing degree. It's getting harder each month." Eleanor sensed the opening. "Tips not making up the difference? Looked like you were handling most of the crowd this morning." Something broke in Lily's expression. "We're supposed to pull digital tips and split them between baristas on shift," she explained, voice barely audible. "But David created this system where only certain people get assigned to the digital POS. The rest of us get told cash will be evened out at the end of day." Her pen pressed hard against the paper. "It never is." Eleanor felt a cold anger building behind her calm facade. "How much have you lost just this month?" "Over $500. Her voice trembled slightly. "I've tracked it, every shift, every transaction. I know exactly what the system reports versus what I receive." "Why haven't you reported it?" Lily's bitter laugh was so quiet it was almost just an exhale. "To who?" "David's nephew, Kyle, is always on the favorable schedule. His uncle makes sure he gets the digital POS login most mornings." She nodded subtly toward Kyle. "Regional management only talks to David. And corporate?" she shrugged. "They don't care about someone like me." Eleanor left the $20 on the table and added another 20 discreetly tucked under her coffee cup where only Lily would find it. Outside, she pulled out her phone and dialed a number rarely used, the direct line to Marcus Thorne, Daily Grind's head of internal audits. "Marcus, it's Eleanor. I need you to drop everything and meet me in an hour. We have a serious situation at Daily Grind number 17. I'm going to need access to their POS records, security footage, and employee complaints for the past 6 months. Complete discretion. No one can know I was here today." The Daily Grind's corporate conference room had been transformed into an impromptu command center. Laptop screens illuminated the concerned faces of Marcus Thorne and his investigative team. Eleanor, in her tailored suit, paced. "Show me again," she instructed, stopping behind Marcus's chair. On his screen, employee payroll records stretched back 6 months. "It's clever how they've disguised it," Marcus said, highlighting several columns. "See here, David created this support staff classification in the system. It's not even in our corporate handbook." "And Lily falls under this category along with 7 others?" Eleanor said grimly. "Yes," Marcus confirmed. "When they're logged as support staff, the system doesn't assign digital tips to them. Instead, tips automatically route to whoever is listed as the primary POS operator for that shift." "Let me guess," Eleanor said. "Kyle Stone, 70% of the time?" "Exactly." Marcus pulled up another spreadsheet. "And these other 2 baristas share the remaining shifts, all part of what employees are calling David's Circle." Another investigator, Sarah, turned her laptop toward Eleanor. "We accessed the camera footage you requested. Watch this." The security video showed the end of a busy lunch shift. Staff gathered around David, who held a metal cash box. The video had no audio, but the body language was clear. David counted bills, handed specific amounts to certain baristas, including Kyle, while others received significantly less. Lily gestured at the box, clearly questioning the distribution. David's response was a dismissive wave. "Can we get audio on any of this?" Eleanor asked. "No," Sarah replied, "but we don't need it. Look at the numbers." Her screen displayed a receipt analysis from the previous day. Customer tips on credit cards totaled $780 for the morning and lunch shifts. According to payroll records, only $390 was distributed to staff, with Kyle receiving $160 of that. "Where's the other $390?" Eleanor demanded. "That's where it gets interesting," Marcus said, pulling up bank records. "Small deposits are made weekly to this account." He pointed to a name, David Stone Management, LLC, his personal business entity created 3 months after he took over this location. Eleanor felt sick. This wasn't just favoritism, it was theft, plain and simple. "What about employee complaints?" she asked. The third investigator, Tom, who had been quiet until now, handed her a folder. "That's the strangest part. On paper, there aren't many. 2 formal complaints in 6 months, both marked resolved by regional management." "Mark wouldn't ignore something like this," Eleanor muttered. "He didn't see it," Tom explained. "The complaints never reached him. They were intercepted and handled by David's assistant manager." He pointed to a signature. "Guess who that is? Kyle Stone." "The nephew," Eleanor read, disgust evident in her voice. "It gets worse," Tom continued, pulling out exit interviews. "We found a pattern in departing employees. Most cited personal reasons or schedule conflicts for leaving, but I called 5 former employees this morning. All told the same story. Questioning tip distribution led to punishment shifts, early mornings, split shifts, sections with lowest tip potential. Eventually, they'd quit. And Lily hasn't quit because she can't afford to," Marcus finished. "Her tuition is due next month. She's one of the few with open availability, so even with the tip theft, she makes just enough to scrape by." Eleanor stared at the evidence before her, connecting dots beyond what her team had uncovered. This explains the customer complaints about staff morale, the inconsistent service, the high turnover. She shook her head. All symptoms of a deeper disease. "Conservatively, we estimate at least $15,000 in misappropriated tips over the past quarter," Sarah added. "And that's just what we can trace through the digital system." "We have enough to terminate them immediately," Marcus stated. "The question is how you want to handle it." Eleanor walked to the window, watching the rain outside. The easy path would be to send in corporate HR, handle it quietly, terminate the offenders, and move on. Minimum publicity, minimum disruption. But that wouldn't be justice for Lily or the others who had suffered. "I have a different approach in mind," she said finally. "Here's what we're going to do." She outlined her plan as the team took notes. By the time she finished, Marcus was smiling grimly. "It's unorthodox," he admitted, "but it sends the right message, not just to David and Kyle, but to every Lily who's been afraid to speak up." "When do we move?" Sarah asked. Eleanor checked her watch. "Friday morning, breakfast rush. I want everyone to see what happens when someone steals from my employee." Friday morning arrived with clear skies. At precisely 8:30 a.m., 3 black SUVs pulled into the Daily Grind parking lot. Heads turned inside the cafe as the vehicles parked directly in front of the entrance. Lily, refilling a coffee urn, noticed the commotion. Her first thought was health inspectors, though they never arrived in a convoy. Her second, more terrifying thought was immigration officials, though everyone at Daily Grind had proper documentation. Still, her hand trembled slightly as she set down the coffee pot. The cafe fell quiet as the doors swung open. First came 2 men and a woman in business attire, carrying tablets and folders. Then a distinguished older woman with silver hair and a no-nonsense expression. And finally, a tall woman in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit. Lily's coffee urn clattered to the floor. It was the kind customer from earlier in the week, but transformed. Gone was the baseball cap and cardigan. In their place stood a confident executive with calculating eyes and an expression that commanded attention. "Who the hell?" David emerged from the back office, stopping mid-sentence as recognition dawned on his face. "Ms. Vance, we weren't expecting." "Clearly," Eleanor replied, her voice cool and controlled. The corporate entourage spread out strategically around the cafe, blocking exits and creating a perimeter. Customers watched, forks suspended midway to mouths, as Eleanor surveyed the cafe like a general assessing a battlefield. "Ladies and gentlemen," she addressed the diners, "I apologize for the interruption. I'm Eleanor Vance, CEO of the Daily Grind. We're conducting an emergency corporate review that cannot wait. Please enjoy complimentary meals on us today." She nodded to one of her team members who began distributing vouchers. David stepped forward, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Vance, what an unexpected pleasure. If I'd known you were coming, you'd have—" "What, David?" Eleanor cut him off. "Created a different staff schedule? Temporarily adjusted the tip distribution system? Perhaps deleted some revealing transaction records?" The color drained from David's face. Kyle, who had been frozen by the coffee station, took an instinctive step toward the back exit. "I wouldn't," the distinguished older woman stated flatly, blocking his path. "Security has already been instructed to detain anyone leaving without authorization." Eleanor walked to the center of the cafe. "I visited this location on Monday, not as your CEO, but as a customer named Sarah. What I discovered was disturbing enough to trigger a thorough corporate investigation." She opened a leather portfolio, removing several documents. "David Stone and Kyle Stone, approach please." The uncle and nephew exchanged glances before reluctantly stepping forward. "For the past 6 months," Eleanor continued, her voice carrying throughout the now silent cafe, "you have systematically diverted employee tips through manipulation of our POS system and loyalty program. You've created fraudulent employee classifications to redirect digital gratuities. You've intimidated staff who questioned these practices and intercepted complaints before they could reach regional management." David's face contorted with anger. "These are baseless accusations. You can't possibly—" $15,285.47, Eleanor interrupted. "That's the exact amount of tips misappropriated from your staff in the past quarter alone. We have the transaction logs, testimony from former employees, and video evidence." She gestured to Sarah, who turned her tablet to display a damning spreadsheet. "We even conducted our own transaction yesterday, a $40 tip that magically found its way to Kyle's account despite being entered on a table Lily was serving." Kyle's face had gone ashen. "Uncle David, you said no one would ever check." He stopped abruptly, realizing his mistake. David shot his nephew a venomous look before attempting damage control. "Miss Vance, there's clearly been a misunderstanding about company policy. If you'll allow me to explain our unique approach to team incentives—"
"Theft is not a unique approach," Eleanor stated coldly. "It's a crime, one that has harmed the hard-working people who are the backbone of this company." She turned to address the staff who had gathered in a loose semicircle. "As of this moment, David and Kyle Stone are terminated from the Daily Grind. The company will be pressing charges for theft and fraud." She nodded to 2 members of her team who stepped forward to escort the men from the building. "You can't do this!" David shouted, desperation replacing his usually controlled demeanor. "This is my cafe! I built it up from nothing!" "No," Eleanor countered firmly. "You inherited a successful location with loyal staff, and you exploited both. The people who truly built this cafe are standing right here." She gestured to the baristas, bakers, and hosts who watched in stunned silence. "And they deserve better than what you've given them." As David and Kyle were escorted out, Lily stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "You were never a librarian, were you?" Eleanor's stern expression softened. "No, Lily, but everything else I saw was real, including the theft of your hard-earned tips." For the first time in months, Lily allowed herself to smile without reservation. "So what happens now?" 3 months later, Eleanor Vance returned to Daily Grind number 17, this time with no disguise and no entourage. The bell chimed as she entered, and the atmosphere that greeted her bore little resemblance to the tense, divided workplace she'd encountered as Sarah. The morning light streamed through freshly cleaned windows, illuminating a dining room where baristas moved with purpose and genuine smiles. Near the entrance, a new digital display showed the day's staff, complete with photos and a transparent explanation of the tip-sharing system. "Good morning, Miss Vance." The greeting came from Lily, who approached with confident strides. She wore a crisp new uniform with a manager's pin gleaming on the collar. "Good morning, Manager Evans," Eleanor replied, unable to suppress a smile at her transformation. The dark circles beneath Lily's eyes had faded, replaced by a spark of determination that reminded Eleanor of herself years ago. "Your usual table is ready," Lily said, leading her to the same booth where she'd first sat as Sarah. "Though I hope you won't mind if I join you briefly. The morning rush doesn't start for another 15 minutes. As they settled in, Eleanor noticed small but significant changes throughout the cafe. Staff rotated between sections based on a chart visible to all. The POS terminals had been replaced with a new system featuring individual login cards for each barista. "How's the new tip distribution system working?" Eleanor asked, as Lily poured her coffee, a gesture she insisted on performing personally whenever Eleanor visited. "Transparency makes all the difference," she replied. "Every employee can see exactly what tips came in and how they're divided. The digital dashboard updates in real time. No more mysterious disappearances or unexplained shortfalls." Eleanor nodded approvingly. After the terminations, she tasked Lily with helping design a new tip management protocol, one that would eventually be implemented across all 150 Daily Grind locations. "And your classes?" "Final semester starts next week." Lily's eyes lit up.
The compensation package from my promotion included enough to cover it, plus the back pay settlement from David and Kyle more than made up for what they took. The legal proceedings against the Stones had been swift and public. Rather than face a protracted court battle, they'd agreed to a settlement that included full restitution to all affected employees, plus penalties. The story had made headlines in the coffee industry, a cautionary tale about accountability and justice. "How's the staff adjusting?" Eleanor asked, glancing toward the kitchen where several new faces moved alongside veterans. "Better than expected. We've retained everyone except those who were directly involved in the scheme, and our new hires are thriving." Lily's expression grew serious. "The anonymous reporting system you implemented has been a game changer. People feel safe speaking up now." That had been one of Eleanor's first actions after the confrontation, creating a direct hotline for employees to report concerns without fear of retaliation. Tips went straight to corporate compliance, bypassing local management entirely when necessary. "Regional oversight has improved too," Eleanor noted. "Mark's been checking in weekly, like clockwork." Lily confirmed, though he still looks terrified every time he walks through the door. She allowed herself a small laugh. "Can't blame him after the retraining you put him through." Mark hadn't been corrupt, just complacent, taking David's reports at face value without digging deeper. His punishment wasn't termination, but education, a comprehensive course in employee advocacy and fraud detection, followed by 6 months of enhanced supervision. As the first customers began trickling in, Lily rose to greet them. "Will you be staying for the full breakfast service today?" "Just watching for a while," Eleanor replied. "I have other locations to visit. This is my 4th this week." After the Daily Grind number 17 revelation, Eleanor had quietly launched similar investigations at 15 randomly selected locations. 3 had shown minor issues. 1 had revealed another tip scheme, though less sophisticated than David's. The message was spreading throughout the company. Accountability wasn't just a corporate buzzword anymore. Before leaving, Eleanor stopped by the kitchen to shake hands with each staff member. In the back office, formerly David's domain, she glimpsed Lily's nursing textbooks stacked neatly beside manager training manuals. "We're tracking to beat last quarter's numbers by 15%, she told Eleanor proudly, walking her to the door. "Turns out happy employees create happy customers. Who knew?" "Some of us suspected," Eleanor replied with a wink. Outside, she paused to look back through the window. Lily had returned to her duties, confidently directing staff as the breakfast rush began in earnest. On the wall behind her hung a new framed mission statement, one developed collaboratively by corporate and staff representatives after the incident. Respect begins with honesty. Success follows naturally. As Eleanor drove away, her phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Another tip had come through the hotline, this time from a small location in Arizona. The details were different, but the core issue remained the same: powerful people taking advantage of those with less protection. "Send a team," Eleanor replied. "I'll meet them there tomorrow." She glanced in the rearview mirror at Daily Grind number 17, now growing smaller in the distance. The cafe looked the same from the outside, same sign, same building, same location. But inside, everything had changed. Because one exhausted barista had dared to speak the truth to a woman she thought was just passing through.